So, welcome to another podcast episode. Um, Today, I just wanted to talk about the fact that it's hard to maybe try to accumulate up to six-figure income and then millions of dollars and stuff like that. Just talk about how difficult it is overall, and I think everyone can acknowledge that it's not easy. And you know what? It makes sense that it's not easy. I mean, other than that, I'm sure everyone would have been way better off with six figures for a long time. So yeah, one of the things that I don't understand, or what there seems to be a big gap in, like a blind spot, is on how somehow somebody becomes successful. Key word throughout this whole podcast that I want you to think about is the word somehow. Like, I observe a lot on how things work, move, function, think, and everything. So, I acknowledge that things cost a big chunk of money when you're trying to do certain things, especially at a big scale. And if you look at even a restaurant, if you look at any business, doesn't matter if it's a funeral home business, doesn't matter if it's a flower shop that you just opened, doesn't matter what it is. For that place to exist, that building, it cost money. And it's not like it cost a few bucks. Normally it costs quite a chunk of money. So the question is, how did this person was able to get the money? Whether it is because they won the lottery, whether it was because, I don't know, there's some sort of hand-me-down money throughout the family, or, maybe the culture, spoils them with money, whether it's they took out a huge loan that, they took a risk, whether maybe they just got somehow awarded this money. It's just the word somehow, like, that's the question, is how did this person get this building? And how is this person able to transition to hire people and put them on payroll and, get the insurance going and getting the whole system going with taxes, because you're paying somebody. Like, how, that's the question, is somehow they were able to get to that level. And the word somehow they have this, somehow they are successful, or at least look successful. I see a lot of big companies out there, businesses that maybe, let's say, it's somewhat new-ish. Maybe it's 10 years old. And, they're freshly new in these times. And let's say they have facilities. Let's say they have the personnel hired. And let's say they're even expanding and stuff like that. And let's say that this was started by 1 to 3 people, maybe even 4. And they got all this established. They got the facility space needed. They got all possible tools and equipment needed and materials, and they got everything. They got the computer, they got the system, the interlinked system for everything, and they're just set in stone, established, and they're operating. And now, there's the managers, and then there's the people you hire, there's the HR, and it's the traditional business, is the setup. It's what you see, is that building, is that thing that operates, and they have a website. You see all these things, right? And they're doing fairly well. It looks like it's doing fairly well. I mean, it's up and running. When you order something, it gets delivered and blah, blah, blah. But the question is, somehow they were able to get to this level. And I feel like there's an ignorance and also blind spot on this detail on how exactly was this possible in this economy. Because, I studied things, and based on my experience and, what I dig into, and just seeing the scope of things in this economy and with money involved, I just wonder how in the world is someone able to have this going. And usually what I tend to find out is that when I look in super deeply, you would find out that this person or these people, to get all this things connected and going like that at such scale, they have a little bit of something that other people don't have. And it can be a combination of things. They may have the confidence that others don't have. That's something people don't think about. Somehow this person has the mental confidence to do certain things. They may not realize that. Somehow, that's one somehow. They, according to their history and, what they've done before and gone into, they may have grown up in an environment that is totally hands-on, and they get positions and they try things out, and so they have like this interesting experience that off that somehow, they, and also because of them, they connect into something else, and then from that experience connect onto something else based off that. And so they unlike others, they are this person that's doing this, that's somehow living in a very literal way. Like, so in other words, their brains is working in a way others don't. That's something they may not realize, because for you to do something and based off that experience, you jump into something that is relevant, that seems to be like linear and relevant, related, and you jumping then from that experience, jump into a higher experience within that realm, and then a higher experience to that realm, then you start getting the necessary prestige, in my opinion, to do other things. And not everyone is doing that. And I'm not saying everyone should. I'm just saying that as far as the somehow on how someone gets to certain levels, they may not realize, and other people may not realize, that they don't have these lifestyles, and they're just not that person. So you may not have that confidence to constantly throw yourself out there in public realms and do guest speaking and taking roles that involves more in public realms of things, like managing, and then managing bigger stuff, and then, and just having this going. And, usually that would come with good pay. So all that leads to something. And then if we're talking about how somehow someone gets to this level to having these things, they have somehow they connect with necessary things to make things happen in such a scale because of how they are. And somehow there's this deep relationship thing going on that others may not have. I don't know, somehow this person or group of people, I don't know what it is about them, maybe some sort of aura no one can explain. They're able to, I don't know, bump shoulders with someone, have a little discussion, and then somehow it turns into something because, I don't know, somehow there's this connection of let's all together do something at a big scale that's hard. And everyone's background at that point seems to be they all have almost the equal confidence, and they all before this they've all had some sort of career, something that earns money that is, in my opinion, substantial enough to be kind of chilling. So there's that, and then somehow things get connected. And then as far as how the money comes to be to start these things, it's just the fact that, things are aligned in such a way that it happens. And so a lot of people may not realize, even the people that have these businesses may not realize that the way somehow these things started is because they were able to somehow get the money they need. And they were almost babied. They were in this cozy environment to do something that's complicated and operational. And I feel like not a lot of people have those environments. And obviously not everyone grows up a certain way to do the same experiences. For example, just like in school, not everyone ends up being some sort of, those programs where you can be president of something, right? As a student, not everyone would rise to be multi-presidents, right? And so it was that one person. And so just like with any program or experience, it could be that those few people that end up taking certain paths, and they may not think about it, but the path they're taking is molding them. And so because these people are not aware of how they're getting molded to do certain things other people can, they don't realize that. And so they're just always nonchalant about how they do things and how they made this happen, but they don't realize that they had certain things aligned. It's almost like a miracle gift, luck that others don't get. And they were able to, even just the confidence they had, which is also, I think, a gift, they were able to get these things going. And then, maybe the backing and the groups of people, everyone somehow high-fived to the whole idea and operation plans. And even the money sources high-fived the idea. And so there's this, like I said, this alignment of stuff going on that allows these things. Even if you were to get your hands on investors, right? The fact that you went as far to locate investors to look into your idea and project, or even if you started an upstart, that's something you have to think about. Like, somehow, is that how you got the money for this? Did you start in Upstart? Did you somehow contact investors, private investors? And if so, how did you find these people? How did you find these private investors that can give you money and invest in it if it's good? And also, how much money do you have to drop in yourself? That's another question. Because I think even with investors, you still need to have your own money somehow on your own personal, that you carry on your own personal back to deal with, whether it's, loans or whatever. All these things don't get talked about in how someone got this going. Even if you are starting, a mobile restaurant service. Let's say you're a mobile food truck. Okay, and you're doing really well. And you're booming. And you're making great money and you're getting notorious. The question is, how did this person get their hands on everything to do this? That is like, somehow, if you ever see these things, right? These businesses, Uber, that successful food truck, that successful floral shop, that successful furniture store, whatever. If you ever look at anything that's established, that's been running, don't you ever wonder how in the world were they able to do that? Because it's not so simple, in my opinion. And earning money, in my opinion, trying to become wealthy and trying to be better off with your own ideas and plans and generating this income, in my opinion, is complicated. Even if it was through a job that you got hired in, it's complicated. Because even if you're making six figures from your job, most likely it came to the fact that you went to college, maybe in high-end engineering, high-end doctor, maybe surgeon, whatever. And so, yeah, you're earning this big income, but somehow, right? Well, the story of that somehow, they went to college and they paid a little over $80,000 for it. And they busted their butts doing very complicated stuff, practically having no life. And maybe they're practically a genius and they flew through those things. And so now they're earning this. So if you look at anything, right, I like to think about it as how complicated things are. And so when I observe this, I think somehow they got to this. So back to that food truck example. I mean, there could be multiple ways that somehow this person got established, right? Like what? Like, for example, what kind of job were they working at for the past years, right? Like how much did they pay over the years? Enough for you to have enough money to do certain things, right? That's one question. And, for example, if throughout their years they've been working a job that pays, maybe after taxes, they're racking in like, a little over $40,000 a year, then that makes sense that maybe throughout those years with that kind of income, they were able to save. And then, they took off with this idea. And then not just that, but they have the interest. Not just that, but they have that confidence for that specific thing. Not just that, they can cook. And so when we look at how somehow this food truck came to be, it could be because of that, source wise. And then if this person that started this food truck has just been working a minimum wage job throughout their times, and now got this food truck going, somehow, right? Then you have to think that maybe they took out a substantial loan and took a risk, and things started going well. And maybe throughout the periods, they were just trying to build their credit. Maybe also they got family support. Maybe also there was a family member that does food truck or used to do this. And so they have a truck already, right? And then probably going to gift them the truck, or give them the truck for a very practically free price. And so right there, with a little bit of backing and this food truck and everyone in on a great idea, right? They get established, you get this thing going. So there's like everyone from any angles are putting in hands, pushing this thing to happen. That could be the story. Because I feel like, obviously when you go to a food truck, you don't really ask, how did you get established? I don't feel like many people ask that. How did you get the money to start this? I mean, that's kind of a personal question, right? Who comes out the blue to ask that? Unless you're some sort of researcher. But anyways, that doesn't really much happen. But let's say you were to ask this question anywhere. How did you get this to this level? You realize that most likely you're going to get a very generalized answer in that moment. You're going to get a very generalized answer, and most likely it's going to be a story about something from back then. Back then, something got established, or blah, blah, blah. And it got founded by this person, and then, things took off. Okay, it got founded by this person. Okay, and that person's not even working there, right? So you're talking to someone else. I mean, what is the likelihood for you to talk to the source, right? So you don't know how somehow this person got established. So let's say somehow you talk to this source. Let's say you go even deeper to find out, right? So you talk to the real deal guy, the guy that started this. And you ask this person, how did you get this going? And that's an important question, because you have to know how this person, because all you know is that somehow there's a business running, but there's not much detail, right? So whatever story you get from this person, how they got this running, that's something to take into account, like deeply. And maybe when this person tells you a story, most likely when you hear source stories on how things got started, maybe there could be that there's a lot that you don't have personally, right, going on. It could be that you never had a high paying job to run with, and being able to make a living and save and make decent savings. It could be that you've been lacking that. It could be that you've been lacking, the parents that are doing very, very well, like substantially well. You may be lacking that. You may be lacking some confidence to do certain things, and you could be lacking the interest. So if you look at the list of how things have started, maybe you lack a lot of things. If you look at Amazon and how it got started, you could lack, a high-paying career job to make the savings, to put some money down. You could lack the parents that pitched in, like almost $500,000 to get something going. And you could lack the investors that also pitched in a huge chunk of money. So for you to start an operation off the bat and start booming like in Amazon, for you, it's going to be much difficult. So that means that you're going to be pushed off from attempting that because of the things you lack, and the fact that for you specifically, it's not going to be so possible like that. So that means that if you're someone that's desperate to really get a website going that does well and booms off the bat somehow, just like Amazon, almost like a day overnight situation, then somehow this person, as an individual, they're going to be themselves enough to somehow in their brain say, I'm going to push boundaries. And that's something that people don't realize. You know, if you look at people, for example, let's say Gary Vee, for example, if you ever heard of him, some successful entrepreneur that you hear about online and stuff like that. If you think about the things he says and this awesome never-ending determination and how he says things and talks, I don't think what he doesn't realize is that he's some sort of secret hidden genius to his mind. He doesn't realize that he is himself, and his brain is able to be snappy, sharp, persistent, and he has a level of confidence. So for him to tell people, hey, oh, this is what you do. You have to get up your ass. You do this, you do that. You got to stop complaining and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that, in my opinion, doesn't work, because that is a very general story. And what he doesn't realize, and a lot of people don't realize, is that they are not him. You are not him at all. For you to be this sharp Poindexter genius that is just everyday driven, and you're just like that you're just like that energized bunny rabbit, just constantly going and going and going and doing this, doing that, then doing that, then doing that. He doesn't realize that that's him, and that subconsciously doesn't realize that he has some sort of special ability or talent to do that. And so for you to try to put people on that pace, you might as well invent a chip to plant into someone to turn them into you, to turn them into Gary Vee. I see a lot of that going on. I see a lot of people, let's say they're doing really well and they're doing guest speaking, they're coaching, right? They don't realize that human beings are not them. And what human beings go to them for is to see what is it that they aren't doing, or trying to see, they're trying to find like what words come out that somehow make them successful. You know, but what I really think people are looking for, they're trying to find out, why aren't they sharp? They're trying to find out, why aren't they this disciplined robot that wakes up at the same time every day, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do anything? They're trying to figure out why they aren't this person that is doing that is so linear and doing things down the line and does A to B naturally. They fix their bed naturally all the time, and they're doing nothing but business stuff, and they're not procrastinating in one bit, and they're like a human being with no shortfall. That's what people are trying to figure out when they go to someone like him, right? Or anyone that's someone like that, right? because somehow that's just them. That's their brain. And so when you see these entrepreneurs that are just, they almost get no sleep doing what they do, is because that's them. So when they acquire such massive success, it's all due to the fact that they have some sort of strange ability to be the sharp person that never sleeps. And it's just, they have a workaholic, do or die mentality that others don't. And so for you to suggest, for that person to suggest that people are lazy or don't got it, or, they have no like desire, and, we just sit on our asses all day. They don't realize that human beings are not them. So for you, so that's another thing in that somehow someone becomes successful, or somehow a business gets established. It's because a lot of people don't realize that they're not that person. And so I feel like a lot of people are falling behind in trying to figure out how to not be themselves, to do something complicated. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's never been you to have an operational business of whatever kind, and you start now, then you're going to be a little more behind and struggling versus someone who always been this sharp edge person that flies through everything and doesn't struggle with math, doesn't struggle with confidence, being around people and speaking and attending this, signing up for that. They don't realize that. And so since that person is flying through things because of who they are and their personality and character, they may not realize that they're successful because of their ability to not mind being around people, not mind talking in front of people, and then jumping into other stages that's relevant. And then, handling jobs of maybe being a leadership, being head of something. They don't realize that it's not that they are less lazier than other people. They don't realize that they have, their brain has an ability, unlike others, to move a certain way. It's not that they're more smarter. It's just that somehow in their environment and the processing of things, they have like almost like a supernatural mind, in my opinion, because here they are with this ability. I don't know if what's feeding them is desperation. I don't know, maybe if someone has a gun to their head to do these things. But the way they're working, the way I've studied certain people, is that, I don't know, somehow they're just doing it. And so for people to try to wonder why is it that they're not there yet, it's because of that. There could be a lot of things lacking, physically and non-physically. On paper, if you were to make a list, there could be a lot of things lacking. For you to try to be on that scale. And so let's say you want to do something similar, and you look at this list and you're lacking all these things. That means, if you were to think this way, that means that if you were to start something, you would have to start at a completely different angle, at a completely different far point on the map compared to them. Doesn't mean that it's impossible. It just means that you're starting at a different angle. And so however you snake your way to the center point to succeed, you're going to have, your challenges. It's going to be more bumpier than the other person. And so that's how I think there's success tends to come. And for some people. And so I feel like what's important to figure out is your own personal somehow. Because from the outside looking in, people are going to be wondering, right? So I feel like it's probably a good idea to be on that boat, on delivering that blind spot, to have people wonder. Because I feel like a lot of people would think anything's difficult from the outside looking in because of how things look and how things get established and things get going, right? People could assume things, especially if it's done right and it's going in a certain way and it's believable that it's a professional manner. I started thinking to myself, I need to get on this somehow boat. I need to somehow be successful too, man. That's what I started thinking because, you know, I see all these things and I'm like, how did this happen? And so with this list that I talked about, I started thinking about what I lack to start. And I realized that, you know, if I'm going to take a certain path to try to succeed based on my angle and my starting point, you know, I accept and acknowledge the fact that I'm going to have a more bumpier road. I don't have this. I don't have that. I don't have buddies in high-end professional fields that could give a word of mouth or give a leg up. You know, I could realize that maybe I don't have such 100% the biggest confidence. I could lack a bunch of know-how. So already I see that I have a lot to work on. So the question becomes, how further back would this have me because of these things? How long or how much would I struggle? How much would I even make it? What's my percentage due to these factors? And so that's something everyone has to think about. And so, you know, you look at what you got to work with. You have to think about, well, based on what you lack, have, and don't have, what's your percentage likelihood for potential? And so for your numbers to look not so good and somehow still be on the ball and push it using pure brain power and desperation and sweat, then that is something you have to talk about. You know, let's say somehow you acquire the massive success with whatever it is you're doing. Or even I, for instance. And things are booming for me. Things are working for you, right? That somehow, how did you get that to that level? You know, how much did you stress? That's another question. You know, did you tear up out of the stress and desperation? You know, were you so pissed that you worked through it with the stress that somehow you made it? Could that have been a factor? You know, because maybe someone else didn't have that stress. And maybe someone needs to look into that and maybe think, man, maybe I need to somehow stress out and have a little bit of a headache, tear up a bit, and maybe push myself. Maybe somehow that does something to your brain to do more. I mean, maybe that's a factor you need to write down or look into. But does that successful person talk about how maybe they had their hands tied and a gun to their head and had stresses that were almost giving them a headache, and maybe that's how they came up with these ideas, you know, alongside maybe having other types of backings? That's the thing, we don't know that. We don't know that yet. As far as the story goes and how this thing happened, because you may see a business operating, everything looks peachy, you know, they have a bunch of high-end equipment, everything. You could just be like, man, this job is like, you just don't know how they got started. You just know that they're a multi multi-billion-dollar company that you get hired in to do, and you're getting paid decent. But you don't think about that. Maybe this whole operation is running off of a stress that would make you cry. You don't know that. You don't know if that person's maybe losing their hair to try to make this happen. That's what we don't know. But if we knew that, if we knew all the details, then maybe it could just be a little better to figure out something on your own. You could be less lost in wondering what it takes. And so that is the main point of this podcast. And also like to talk about how someone is able to get to a breaking point where somehow a company wants to invest or donate to you. And the idea of somehow getting rewarded the income to have a better footing. Because I feel like somehow, let's say you want to be an influencer or whatever, maybe you want to do public speaking, whatever it is, and you think, this person is just being handed money to do something that's basically whatever. You have to think about it like this. You have to think about what would make a company do that. What would make a person or an individual want to pay a substantial amount of money for what you are offering? As a person, as just a person by himself. You have to think about that, because in this economy, I just feel like ain't no one want to pay you a huge chunk of change just because. So that's something you have to get into your mind. I've gotten into my mind is, I don't know, I just feel like people can be stingy with their money. And so whenever you hear stories about someone getting a huge chunk of change, I feel like it must have came through some sort of systematic process. So let's say an individual got awarded money. Okay, they just got awarded money. Okay, well, how? What happened? Well, most likely, this person was in a deep turmoil, a deep, shitty situation with a deep, sad story, and they were in the complete pit. And so somehow they got to this level where somehow they got awarded this money through a consideration and thought through other individuals. And so when you look into that story, then it's like, oh, well, this makes sense. This person was in a situation that you're not in. Maybe you're in a crappy situation now, but compared to this person, they had it. This person was, who knows how their life would have turned out if it wasn't for that, but they were in a complete shit pile. And so that's how they got the money. Have you ever heard of a story of someone doing decent for themselves, working, just average, not so bad, and then getting awarded this money just because, without even having anything going on, nothing to upstart? I've never heard of that. And so that just proves that when it comes to somehow a company awarding or donating, I feel like as far as what allows someone to be that kind of generous, I feel like it's a very psychological, in tune thing. Because I feel like when it comes to money and just being that handsomely giving or substantial, I feel like it tends to come through more of a bigger reason than just because. And it's not that this world isn't generous, but I just feel like when it comes to money, there's a huge awareness that you don't just give it. There is stipulations, sometimes unknown stipulations, that allows that moment. You know, like I said, for you, let's say the average listener right now, just an average Joe, whatever person who's just working, right? They just have a decent job, and they're not doing so bad, and they're getting paid, maybe $27 an hour, and then for a company or a business or even a well-off individual to somehow just you for some reason say, you know what, I want to give you $100,000. I don't think that exists. That does not exist unless that person was a family member and they were super well off and they just wanted to give you something. But overall, as far as someone you don't know, doing that type of generosity does not exist. Because when it comes to money, everyone's aware that, that's, even if that company is racking in millions and almost at $1 billion a year, there is a deep awareness that giving someone $100,000 is a substantial amount of money, and that, like, psychologically, you don't just give someone that kind of money. If you ever look at the history of things, it's usually through a donation. What are they donating to? A super deep, systematic cause. They're giving money to this person. Well, why? Oh, they're deeply struggling. And so that came in. Let's say they even donate to a politician. Was it just because they wanted to have this person have money so they can buy steak and be chilling? No. This was to fund this person's success, because they believed in them and, they're trying to get some skin in the game. But how much is it just pure generosity? Why would someone or a company donate or just pretty much hand money through bigger causes than just sheer generosity and saying, I just want you to have this money? That's something to think about. Because me personally, right? Let's say I had millions and millions. Or let's say me personally. I'd ask myself, who would I give $100,000 to? Would I? Would that matter? Am I most likely to give $100,000 to an individual, or am I most likely to give $100,000 for more of a reason, like a donating, because thinking that money is going to help the cause more, or deciding to give the money more to someone in a desperate need versus someone that's not in a desperate need, and I just want that person to somehow just be better off? That's the question. And so the point I'm trying to get at is that I feel like when it comes to having someone be well off, I feel like being well off through giving them funding and giving them pretty much just giving them money so they could just be chilling. I feel like that type of generosity of just because doesn't exist unless they're a family member. But I'm talking about stranger to stranger, person to person, people you don't know. It doesn't exist. Usually people want something out of something. And I just feel like it's almost like not always the best behavior, but best attitude. And all that does is just make things more harder because people are closing off generosity, closing off accessibility. And if you ever look at how things operate, if you've ever found yourself in a situation, right, where systematically there was an issue, and let's say you have to make phone calls to try to solve things and blah, blah, blah. If you ever think about the issues, maybe it was a money issue where maybe you're losing money, right? Have you ever thought to yourself, why is it that even though you're a very smart person and you're doing everything well down the line in a legal, professional way, everything's all paperized correctly, why is it that as you're losing money and things are not doing well, there isn't anybody out there, whether it's a bank, government source, high-end resource, why is it that they can't, at least for one time, just give you money just because? Right? You ever think about that? Why isn't there a generosity that comes out of thoughtfulness that looks at the accolades of all you're doing and says, wow, you're doing everything 1,000% while you're not procrastinating, you're sharp, you're smart, you have all these things running legally, everything's down the line perfectly. No one can complain about what you're doing, and you're struggling and you're losing money. And let's say now you're in some sort of a debt situation. You ever think to yourself, why doesn't the bank, for example, decide to, forgive you on loans? Because you're doing everything great and things are sinking. And so one could say, because at that point, right, it is not due to your irresponsibility. I repeat that again. These shitty happenings at that point is not because of your irresponsibility. It's not because you're not responsible and you're not professional. You're doing everything great. So you ever ask yourself, why is that you're doing everything great? Everyone can acknowledge you're doing everything great. Why isn't there a source out there that wants to give you money because of all you're doing great? Why isn't there a system that acknowledges your efforts and the fact that you're going through the stress and you're not doing so well? Why isn't there a system, right? Or the bank? Why would the bank say, well, why would the bank give you issues because you're not able to pay things because your business is not flourishing? Why is the bank, for example, saying, well, if your business is not doing good, that's your fault. You still owe us money. Why does that attitude exist with money? Because the bank could say it's not their responsibility. They're not running the business, right? That's what you'd hear. But why is it that since they're helping businesses, right, giving them money and, they're all about that, why is it that when it comes to money, why is it that the bank, for example, can't acknowledge that you are a decent human being that's trying and that business isn't doing good because it's not your fault. It's just that people somehow are not buying and maybe the economy is not good and people don't want to buy anything. So why would the bank give you a hard time? Why doesn't the bank say, you know what? We're going to forgive you on this loan and you don't have to worry about paying us back because according to everything on paper, you're doing everything well. It's not like you're splurging. It's not like you're not using the money properly. And why isn't there a system of acknowledgement that you're doing everything well? And they decide to credit you and boost you so you don't fall short. Instead of saying, well, You took out a loan. This is your responsibility. If you can't pay back, this is your problem. If you're struggling, that's your problem. You still owe us money. And not give a handout and say, oh, you're struggling and you are doing everything 100%. Here's money for your struggles. Here's $100,000 for you as a person to not struggle. We'll forgive the loan, whatever the amount is, and, because you've been great at doing things, and we'll also give you $100,000. Why doesn't such system exist? Because I feel like whoever's listening to this, if you're ever in a situation, right, I want you to think deeply, deeply about what I'm saying. Putting ignorance aside, I want you to think new in 2022. I want you to think like you never thought of before. Think about this. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're in a slump, things are kind of going downhill, things are not looking so pretty, and the money looks like it's shrinking, and I don't know, things are just looking a little shaky right now. And you've always been this person that's responsible. You're always doing everything to the T, down the line, perfectly almost. 100%, you're doing everything right. Everything's legal. All the papers right. You're not lazy. You're not procrastinating. You're on the ball. You're sharp. You're tackling things at lightning speeds. And then you're going downhill. Ask yourself, why isn't there a system? Why isn't there acknowledgement? Why isn't the bank, the government acknowledging your efforts? Why isn't there somehow anything that can acknowledge how great you're doing things? Because you're stressed, and things are going bad. You're having a slump moment. Why isn't there, according to the resources you're using, the bank, your lenders or whatever, your private entity lenders or whatever, why isn't there a generosity of giving you money just so you're not in the shithole? Why should it be just solely you stressing out on how to figure out something that could be a little bit out of your mental capacity? Why in this economy should you just be left out dry because your attempts to do something in a genuine way is going down the toilet for you? You know what I'm saying? Because there's just talk about taking risk, right? People say, oh yeah, take risk, be bold. Okay, but if you're doing everything great and things are going crappy for you, where's the generosity? What's the generosity that cuts you slack? I mean, for once in your life, why isn't there someone out there that can give you $100,000 to alleviate your stresses? Not as a loan, but because they wanted to credit you so you aren't in a shitty situation. Especially if you're doing everything. And I'm talking about a business example, but this can go on beyond other things. Let's say, for example, let's say, I don't know, let's say you want to give $1,000 to someone you don't know, that you just met. They're becoming a friend, and you want to give them $1,000 just so they're a little better off, and also because you have the money and can afford to. But you credit this person $1,000. What's the harm in that? What's the harm in that? In giving this person that kind of money? And they didn't need to do a favor, and they didn't need to do anything that would say they had to earn this. They just been a good friend, and you just thought this would be generous, and maybe it can help them out. Maybe you just want them to buy something nice. Whatever happened to that generosity? Has that generosity ever existed? Why are people more generous in offering food than giving you $20? Is the big point I'm trying to get at. Why is a company most likely to donate on food, for you as an individual, more than giving you maybe $20 or $50, $100,000 for you to have a leg up? Is it because giving you the food would be more affordable? Is it because they have an attachment to money and they figure, I don't know, maybe that's a lot of money? That is the question that I wonder. You're doing all that you can do. The bank sees that you're busting your ass. The bank sees that you're struggling. The government system sees that you're struggling. And you're a genuine person. You're not lazy. You're busting your ass, but you have struggles on your shoulders. Why should it always just be up to you within the system to get yourself out of super complicated situations that isn't just A to B? Where is a system that rewards you to get out of a slump? That's what I wonder. Where is that? It doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form. If you're struggling right now, and you're just wondering what to do, and you're doing the whole pen and paper math, you're getting all strategic on what to do, and it's like, man, it's just going down the pile. You're just trying to alleviate it as much as possible, like a painkiller. You must be wondering, why doesn't this exist? Why can't there be even someone that's rich, that knows you, a rich company that you can go and tell your problems to and say, man, I don't know, I'm struggling here. Why? I don't know what to do. I'm gonna have to close some things and blah, blah, blah. Where's that source, that bird that hears your problem, that system that hears your problem and says, you know what, we got you. You're struggling deeply. We got you. We're going to give you $100,000 just for the hell of it, because of your situation. We're going to help you. Or let's say, just overall, you're just a genuine person, and and you just want to give someone money. Why is it that most likely people are most likely to share food than give someone money? You don't let someone borrow food. That doesn't make sense. I never heard of that. Oh yeah, let me let you borrow a sandwich. Let me let you borrow soup, clam chowder soup for you to eat. And I guess you could just, I don't know, give me back the soup. No, usually when it comes to giving food, right? Psychologically, for some reason, you don't mind it more than giving the money. And so, I don't know what it is about money, but I just feel like it's because of that you're struggling. That's what I feel. That it's because of that you're struggling. And so, if you ever think about it, if you're in this situation, you're probably thinking, or you probably thought about this many times during stresses. Maybe why is it that you're most likely to get free food to survive, which is nice. It's generous. But when it comes to money and paying the bills and trying to be better off and chilling, I don't know, somehow the money to get that, people, company, businesses, the government system, they're like, oh, well, hold on. I'm not sure if I don't know. We want you to eat, but I don't know about being able to pay the bills and being comfortable. There's this whole weird attitude going on with money handouts. Because if you're in a deep situation and you've always done things right, don't you feel like getting some help without it being a loan, getting the money you need, would be better without it being attached to, a loan, paying it back. You didn't have to do something drastic, crazy to try to earn the money. Like, you didn't have to sell yourself, right? Why is it that when it comes to money, you can't just get it? Even though it's almost more important than eating. Honestly, if one had to in dire situations, right? If you were lost in the woods, or let's say we were back in times, man, somehow, let's say let's say you just wanted to live without having to live in a house, whatever. Why not just build a house, right, in the middle of nowhere, a cabin, and just eat birds and fish from the lake and keep yourself warm with a natural fire and support your family that way, right? And live like that. You could just live like that. And, you won't need money for anything. You could just literally live closed off, and you can see the difference, right, on how you're living without the money and somehow you're surviving, right? But when you come into the system of trying to earn money, immediately things start becoming difficult. It's like you might as well go back to living in the middle of nowhere, just hunting for your food. Because when it comes to the generosity of getting the money, there is no leg up. There isn't much leg up. Everything you have to do has to be mostly you all the time. If you want your business to run and you want things to start, it's just you. The bank could just give you a loan. But then they say, oh, whether or not it's doing good, that's your business. Whether or not it's losing money somehow, even though you're doing everything well, that's your problem. You still owe us money. We will still gouge at your income. And we won't care about whether or not you're struggling or have bills to pay and can't make it well throughout the month. And so you're left literally for dead, even though you're a human being that's trying. And so even to get fed consistently, assuming you were to get fed consistently, that type of generosity does not exist. Everything feels very individual. And when you're struggling, it's just you. And then if you're going to have to beg for help, you're going to have to. If you're going to have to cry on someone's shoulders, you're going to have to literally do that. And hope to God that somehow a leg up comes. Because that's what you would need during those situations. Where's that leg up system? Why must it constantly always be you trying to figure things out? And then when you're in the shit pile, there isn't much of a system to acknowledge you, feel bad for you, and without wanting anything, giving you a substantial help. It's almost as if it's going to better your life, there isn't much of a system put together or even a nonprofit for that. It's almost as if, as a human being, as a whole race altogether, there isn't an interest in helping with money in a huge way, especially when I'm talking about systematically. As far as the government even giving you money without much hassle to get it, just crediting you. That's not happening. So you have to struggle from scratch. And so, if you look at the politicians, right, people in Congress, if you look at what they're doing to make money, they have a job that doesn't feel like a job. They have a job that feels like passion work, that that feels fun and more thrilling than whack. And on top of how awesome it is, their payouts is substantial and handsome. It's very nice. And so already even looking at that is messed up. If you think about anything that I said, you realize that I'm making a point here. There's a lot of strange things going on, and there's a lot of things that don't make sense. For example, if these congressmen are making money, substantial money for what they do, why can't you make $100,000 at your job for what you do? You're doing it day in, day out. You get a short break. It's 40 hours a week. And what you're doing is day in and day out. It's like, it's a lot of work. All you have to deal with and do. So you have to think about that. What is it about a congressman's job that suggests they get paid over $100,000 a year? You ever think about that? You ever think about what they do? And you ever think about the difficulty levels of things as far as the amount of physical work and stresses and just the how things feel, how one end feels more like work more than the other. Congress people, they're getting paid a lot of money to pretty much be sitting all day, almost sitting and talking. It's not like they're lifting boxes and doing procedures, operating an equipment and taking phone calls individually and, doing nitty gritty stuff. So don't you think that you, with whatever job you're doing, you should be getting paid $100,000 a year for your part-time job or whatever you do, right? And so for these people that make such good money, why isn't that with such good money they're making, they can't feel confident and good inside to feel like, you know what? I have less stress to worry about. Let me come up with ideas that help people not stress and have more. So you see, there's a constant error of imbalance and things not adding up. There's a bunch of scatter of nonsense. It's a bunch of silliness going on in a very complicated, systematic world with money and things being interlinked. There's a level of silliness in areas that I feel like it shouldn't be there. Like, as far as the imbalance, it's like silly for things to be this. Like, it's silly for jobs to pay shitty. Like, it's silly that you're struggling right now and, I don't know, somehow the bank doesn't want to give you money. It's trying to let you borrow money, but not give you money to help you. Like, it's like silly to think that, you're going to be left burdened with debts without someone acknowledging how great you've always worked and wants to credit you. Like, it's silly that the congressman would get paid such good money to basically almost do nothing, sit and talk all day. Like, just like silliness in areas that it's like torturous. And I just feel like sometimes, I don't know if it's the human enterprise, I don't know what it is, but when it comes to like the business entities and infrastructures and how it acts on the world and the gears on how it cranks to make things happen, I feel like the human beings behind certain things are not being mindful. They're not thinking turbocharge to help. And so this is how we always feel like we're left for dead. So yeah, somehow this is what we have to deal with. So this is why me personally, I have this attitude to certain things. This is why, like, I try to figure out even a business, I wonder, why do you pay poorly? Why must you run a business that pays poorly for you to be doing better? I ask these sorts of questions because I want to know why this person bothers, why this person went as far to make a decision that sucks. I want to know why a person thinks a certain way, and why is this person ignorant? I feel like a lot of people are ignorant they're ignorant, and they are just carved in ignorance on stone. And I don't know, they don't realize the issues. Especially with the government as well. The government acknowledging that people are making much of a living with jobs pay. It's a shame that a government doesn't step in to make up the difference for you to be better off. Like, it's a shame that the government doesn't supplement you as a worker, maybe an extra $300 with no tax to worry about for you to be better off, right? Like, how come that's not happening? It's like, no, that's not happening. You just have to figure out your way, try out jobs. And the government's pretty much saying, stress out like crazy until you make it. You got money well, that's your problem. We're going to snatch it. We're going to reach into your butthole and get it. That's your problem. Oh, you're not a supreme responsible person. Oh, you're not perfect to keep up with the procedures and how things go and the time frame you had. All they're doing is just make things difficult. So it's a shame that a human being, knowing how complicated things are and the stresses they personally had to deal with, it's a shame they've never, most people don't get sick and tired enough to, I don't know, like, do much about it. And maybe the people that have grown up with the silver spoon in their mouth, I think also they tend to be a cause of the issue. Since everything could be a hand-me-down. You can have an ignorant, unfair operating business. And so I just don't know what would happen. But just think about everything I said. Everything's very complicated. And in a very complicated world, and where there's a lot of stress trying to make it, and literally just to eat and sleep and just do that in peace is very difficult these days. I don't think the government realize how much working sucks. They don't realize the stress. They don't realize how complicated things are, because if they did, we wouldn't be... the stress wouldn't have to be so high. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so that's the end of this podcast. It's just talking about the realities of things and just really thinking about how there's a big lack on necessary features that could really, really help. More help than just making your life better. Help in a way where it does make your life better. Like, there's a huge lack of systematic help that is nitty-gritty. Help with money can be very difficult. And it's a shame even too that college costs a lot of money. At 18, being a teenager, getting into a situation where things cost a lot of money. It's like, if you're going to go to college with that kind of money, it's almost as if the government is suggesting, the system is suggesting that at 18, you get a mortgage for a house. That's just, you see how silly things look? And so sometimes I wonder how this silliness looks to people that are so-called experts. How am I finding this silly, but experts are not? So I just feel like there's a lot of silly human beings that are considered experts. They may be an expert, but as far as their ignorance and values go, they fall off short being a little silly. It's like behind closed doors, they take off a mask and they have the face of a fool, of a complete idiot. where their eyes are popping out and they're just a complete idiot. That's what it feels like sometimes. Because it's hard to believe that experts or people that are professional, that are sharp, that have strong minds, do little about big issues. But yeah, that is what we're dealing with. So that is the end of this podcast. I'm just going to end it. Stay tuned for more, and goodbye.